And we're live. Welcome to the Team Tank rapid recap of another successful loss slash win slash great game for the Lakers. They took down the Nuggets tonight in what was one of the uglier games until the last couple minutes when Ty Lawson remembered, holy cow, I'm still Ty Lawson and Jeremy Lin is guarding me. Um, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into the very first question here because I think it's relevant. We have a question here from at JackHomie27 who asks, why is Jeremy Lin so bad? Guys, without being racist, what are your thoughts?
I was just about to say that's a racist question, but whatever. No, he obviously his biggest issue is that he turns the ball over way too much, and when you watch him, like, he'll have moments where he does really well, and I think it's when he just picks and chooses his spots. But there's too many times where he tries to do too much, and he gets himself into a crowd and just turns the ball over. He forces the issue too much, and that's why his turnover numbers just continue to keep frustrating everybody.
Matt, what do you got? Why is Jeremy Lin so bad at basketball? Relatively speaking, obviously, everybody playing in the NBA is really good at basketball.
I mean, Gary nailed it, but just to add, tonight there were just possession when he would just dribble way too long, and then like throw it into Sacre or Boozer, and it's already a terrible possession with like 6 seconds left on the shot clock. He shouldn't. At the end of the game, it was like a 3-point game. He came in for Clarkson, and everyone on Twitter was just like, why? Mm-hmm. And then immediately throws it away. Ty Lawson lays it in, ball game. So poor decision making, too much dribbling is what I would say.
Yeah, they asked Byron about that decision after the game, and his answer was that for whatever reason, Jeremy Clarkson couldn't guard Ty Lawson, so his response was to bring in Jeremy Lin, who then got toasted by Ty Lawson in that first possession. Gary and I were talking before the pod, and is there anybody really in the NBA who can guard Ty Lawson when he's playing the way he can tonight? You're going to blame Jordan Clarkson for that? What are your thoughts, Ryan?
Unless you have a lockdown defender like Steve Novak on your team, it's gonna be tough to limit a guy like Lawson. But that move didn't make sense because the whole game Lin was getting absolutely toasted by Lawson, and then Clarkson wasn't doing a terrible job. At least he has the quickness to, and he has a lot, and he has length too to at least like be somewhat of a something. Like Lin isn't quick. He doesn't have any length. He doesn't have good defensive fundamentals. And I thought honestly that might have been a tank move right there because Lin had a terrible game. Finished with more turnovers than assists. And I was mad at the time when I saw that Clarkson got taken out for Lin, and then the next play Lin turns it over. I was like, oh, that's a good tanking move by Byron.
Yeah, I had an immediate kind of gut check moment and said, F star 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 you, Byron. My issue is, like, even if two things. It could have been a disaster, and if Lin comes in, plays well, and the Lakers wind up winning a game, like, then what? Congratulations. Like, they shouldn't have won that game, and they potentially could have if the way he wanted the move to go actually went that way. And then secondly, how else is Jordan Clarkson going to learn to guard Ty Lawson, right? Then you're not going to get any better experience than playing against the guy. And he said after the game, Jordan Clarkson did, that Lawson was the toughest guard he's had to go against in this stretch. And he's played against some legitimate guards, right? He's played against Tony Parker. He's played against
Kyrie,
even though he's a shadow of himself. And, that's all experience that he can really learn from. Instead, we put Lin in there, and Lin's not going to be a Laker next year. He's like, congratulations on being short-sighted again, Byron. Well done.
Oh, and to answer your earlier question of why Lin isn't good, or why he sucks, I guess, it's because he's not really good at anything. I mean, he's not a great shooter. He's a all right passer. The last few years he had been a good finisher, but this year he hasn't really been that good. Defensively, he's not that good. So he's just like an average player.
Just to add to that, there was one player in the entire game that had more than 2 turnovers, and it was Jeremy Lin, who had 5 tonight.
What was his plus minus though?
Yeah, it's plus minus, which most of us know is like kind of an irrelevant stat. It was minus 13. Jordan Clarkson was plus 3.
It's totally relevant when it speaks to the point we want to make, Matt. Come on.
Sorry, yeah.
Catch up.
Well, we talked about it too, Anthony, before we went on. It was like the Lakers don't have a single player that can guard Ty Lawson. So, you might as well just leave Clarkson on him and get that experience, because nobody on this team can guard that guy. As evidenced by his stat line, with 32 points and 16 assists, you need to either double team him or, just do something else.
Well, and I mean, at the end of the day, Ty Lawson probably has, would you guys say, the most trade value on that team? I'd say yeah.
Oh, yeah, easily. He's the best.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
He's easily their best player.
Right, and he's not good defensively. So what do you think he's good at? Scoring, going by people, all that good stuff, and of course
he made some ridiculous passes.
Yeah, he's an incredible offensive player, and to punish Clarkson for not being able to stay with him, it's so freaking Byron.
And at least put Ronnie Price in there, at least he'll throw some shoes or something.
And I kind of wanted to, I keep on going on tangents because I think of Byron Scott, but to add to your point, Ryan, about actually analyzing Lin's game, he's not laterally quick, right? All of his games, or all of his points when he's successful, it's getting up to full speed and turning the corner with multiple dribbles. He doesn't go by people with 1 or 2 dribbles. He can't stay in front of guards who can. And he got lit up by Kyrie, against Cleveland. He struggled again tonight against Ty Lawson. For those of you who stands out there, I'm not being racist when I say this, but he sucks. He's not a starting point guard. Let's move on from that 1 month of good basketball he played, and let's think about the future and Jordan Clarkson. Wow, that was a hot take. I apologize, guys. So let's talk about the actual game. I was out with a couple of friends, so I wasn't able to pay as much attention to the first half. But the second half, it looked like exactly how I thought the game would go. Ryan, what were your takeaways from tonight?
Well, I'm just glad we lost, but I had a bad feeling going in. We started out on a 7-0 run. We were up 14-7 at one point. And the Nuggets, they looked like they weren't even interested in the game. And then the fact that we were only down, despite that, the fact we were only up by 3 at halftime. I mean, at that point, it was basically anyone's game. And then obviously they have way more talent than us, and they just outplayed us. Especially because, it was mainly because of Lawson too. He was ridiculous.
Yeah, that's about as well as I think I've seen him play this season.
Well, it's funny because when we were a good team, like guys would always have those type of games against us. And I was saying that early on because he didn't really do that much in the first few minutes. And I was saying, like, when we were good, these are the type of games where teams would always play their best. And now it feels like it's the opposite and it's when we want to lose, so it sucks.
Yeah, my dad and I, we always kind of laugh about, another point guard had a career night against the Lakers.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I mean, since whether it was guards killing Derek Fisher or past his prime Ron Harper, or even Magic back in the day had trouble with quicker guards. For whatever reason, point guards love playing against these Lakers. Matt, what were your takeaways? Matt held down the fort. Teddy, despite some doomsday premonitions about this game, Teddy came through and business. Matt was on the Team Tank 15 account. What were you thinking throughout the game?
Yeah, I had similar thoughts to Ryan. I really thought we were going to win this game, and it looked like we were early on. But yeah, pretty much what Ryan said. Ty Lawson took over 45 minutes, and he had 2 turnovers, which might be his most impressive stat. But as for the game, Carlos Boozer, I mean, I know most of us don't like him, but got to give credit where credit was due. He was good tonight. He had 21 and 10. But just down the stretch, too many mistakes. That's pretty much what ended up killing the Lakers. Couldn't Denver, I think, in the second quarter had a bunch of turnovers, and they ended up with only 7. So the second half, Denver just cleaned up their game and too strong.
Well, Gary, you would agree that, and I think we'd all agree here, but Gary, you can hit on this. Denver is a much more talented team than the Lakers. It's not even close. I mean, the fact that they're struggling like this just speaks to the fact that Los Angeles Lakers can't coach after they retire. But, analyze that roster for me. I mean, there's a bunch of really interesting trade pieces for teams out there, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at their roster, they have decent talent. They're just poorly coached, and they don't play with a ton of effort every night, which is why I think we all thought that the Lakers were going to win tonight, because it just seems like they've given up on Brian Shaw, and they just haven't been playing hard. But they have good pieces. Like Ty Lawson's really underrated. He's really, I mean, to me, he's like I think you can call him a star caliber point guard, even though he's not an all-star. He's really good. But their rookie, Jusuf Nurkic, has been good this year. Fareed has been pretty bad this year, but a lot of guys play pretty bad once they get paid, once they get an increase in pay. So maybe he'll bounce back at some point. Wilson Chandler, Hickson, Darrell Arthur, Foy, Gallinari, McGee. I mean, they've got some decent talent there, but just for whatever reason, Brian Shaw just can't seem to get him going.
I'm looking at the actual numbers. Ryan, you can take over here in a second. How is it Jordan Clarkson and Jeremy Lin both only play? I mean, neither of them played 30 minutes, right? And, I mean, obviously, Clarkson played 27, Lin 21, so that adds up to the 48 minutes at point guard in the game. But isn't it frustrating that at this point in the season we haven't seen Clarkson and Lin back there together at any point?
I mean, I'd like to see Clarkson at the 2 more, because I think he's a more natural 2 guard than a 1 guard. That's just not. I mean, I think they're doing that with Clarkson on purpose, though. I think they're trying to get him experience at the point guard the same way they're trying to get Kelly to play the 3, even though it's clearly not his position. I don't really expect to see them. I mean, as much as I want to see them play together, just because I want to see Clarkson play off the ball more, I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah,
and I'm looking here at Jordan Clarkson's numbers. I mean, he was a made 3-pointer away from a decent stat line, but looking 7 points on 3 of 11 shooting isn't very good. 7 assists and only 1 turnover is really good. I like that. Matt, what do you think about It seems I haven't seen a player. I guess Kobe is an extreme example of this, but Clarkson, it seems, is either in score mode or pass mode, and hasn't quite figured out how to do both in the same game successfully. What do you think might be lending itself to that?
I think it just has to do with being a rookie. He's gonna have games like tonight, and although 3 of 11 is obviously not good, but when he was out there, he was taking care of the ball. It seemed like the offense was in a better flow. So I just think experience. If he can just play like tonight, if he could just play like end of the games, he'll get better each and every day. And even though the shooting wasn't there tonight, I still wasn't really disappointed by his effort and game.
And Ryan already spoke a little bit about Ryan Kelly. Gary, he played 20 minutes tonight, went 1 for 7 with 6 total points, 3 rebounds. He's facing an underrated small forward in Wilson Chandler. What are your thoughts on, again, Byron sticking with this whole Kelly at the 3 ideology?
Well, I mean, I've tweeted this before, and it's great that he's getting minutes, but really the minutes don't mean anything if he's playing out of position, because it's completely detracting from what his skill set is. You know, he's a stretch forward. That's what he is, and he's not going to become this defensive stopper on the perimeter overnight or anything like that. And when he goes up against a guy like Wilson Chandler, he can't beat him off the dribble. Really, all he can do is spot up and shoot threes. And when he's being guarded by other power forwards, he can, you know, he does a really good job of utilizing a pump fake, and defenders usually fall for it. And you know, he'll step in, take one dribble, or he'll go all the way to the basket. And you know, when he's getting guarded by true small forwards, he can't do that. And then, of course, on the other end, he really can't guard. So, you know, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, I understand trying it out for a game or two just to see how it goes, but to do it this long and to continue to do it down the road is just, it doesn't make any sense.
And the unfortunate thing is that, you know, Byron said he was going to stick with this lineup for 15 games or so, or that he was going to stick with it until the All-Star break. And because Kelly has struggled so mightily at the small forward, I'm worried that, you know, Byron might move away from him altogether versus trying him somewhere else, which would be just freaking killer for Ryan Kelly's value and his, you know, confidence and all that stuff moving forward.
Well, that's what they really need to just buy out Boozer's contract, in all honesty. I'm sure he'd rather go just sign with a playoff contender and take a reduced role there. Because if you do that, like, I mean, he's playing well for us and everything, but right now, at this point, you're just trying to develop young guys, and doing that would create minutes at the 4 for him. But, you know, I just don't know if Byron gets that Ryan Kelly is a stretch 4 and he can shoot threes out of that position.
Right. I guess unless you guys have any other thoughts on the game or moving forward, I'd like to kind of go into the thoughts Magic had today on ESPN. Before we get into that, do you guys have anything to add to that game?
No, it's just a huge loss.
Yeah.
Important loss.
Well, someone mentioned it on Twitter that one of our best stretches during the game, we played a little bit of D'Antoni ball with Boozer at the 5, Wes at the 4, and I think it was Nick Young at the 3, Ellington at the 2, and Lynn at the 1. And we had a stretch where we played really well. Our defense, obviously, when Boozer's your last line of defense, it's not going to be that good, but our offense was clicking.
I think that was Ben Rosales.
Probably, yeah.
That tweeted that out, and I think he actually relayed a tweet that somebody else had. And I actually think it was Clarkson that was playing at the point guard, and he was smashing in there and kicking the ball.
Actually, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it was. Because I remember that's when he had a few of those layup opportunities, and that's what they were saying. That's why the floor was so spaced, and he had nice driving lanes.
Yeah. I mean, and we'll hit on this in a second here with Magic, but man, the raw deal that D'Antoni got, where for whatever reason people didn't want to pull any punches with him, but give Byron all the leeway in the world, is mind-boggling. Which brings us to Magic Johnson. Let me read a quote here. This quote was the most interesting to me. This is a piece from ESPN's website. Baxter Holmes reported on it, but he obviously appeared on ESPN First Take this morning. Quote, Jim is trying to do it himself and trying to prove to everybody that this was the right decision, that my dad gave me the reins, Johnson said on Tuesday's ESPN First Take. He is not consulting anybody that can help him achieve his goals and dream to win an NBA championship. I mean, obviously Magic might be plugged in. His connections run deep with the Lakers. I just don't see that being true. I don't see that being possible. I don't know. What do you think, Ryan? Do you think Jim is going kind of Lone Ranger on us?
I mean, I've come to an understanding that it's like Jim and Mitch basically work together. And there's other guys in the front office too who we don't always hear about, and they're kind of it's like a group effort. It's not Jim goes off and does whatever he wants. And truthfully, I think Mitch does more than Jim does. I think Jim just kind of adds some thought here and there, and maybe like adds a few team goals like the owners do in 2K. But I mean, the thing that annoys me the most is like every time something goes well, like a good move or something, like that Lynn trade when we got that first round pick for him, it's oh good job Mitch. And then if something goes bad, like the Steve Nash trade, oh Jim Buss is an idiot. He has no idea what he's doing, and it just gets old after a while. I mean, not every move the front office makes is going to work out, and there's not one single guy. Well, especially coming from us fans, and unless, like you said, unless Magic is plugged in, like we don't actually know who's making the decisions or like whose idea it was to trade for like Steve Nash, let's say. But just to give one guy credit when everything goes well and to blame the other guy when something goes wrong is so stupid.
Yeah, Gary, what are your thoughts here? The next quote that he went into, quote, and I really believe this, Kobe should say to Jim and them, look, if you don't sign one of these free agents this offseason, man, I'm just not going to play next year. One, Kobe has 25 million reasons to play next year. Two, that's just not Kobe anymore, right? He's already said that he's cool with being patient. He wants the front office to be the front office. What are your thoughts on that secondary quote here?
Well, it's funny because I don't think there's any chance that Kobe does something like that, because Kobe has really been just relatively quiet this year on the team struggling and how the roster is built. And, if this was Kobe back in like 2006, 2007, I mean, he would have been fuming all year long. And this year he hasn't really said anything. I think, which makes me believe that his contract extension was like, we're not going to be good for a couple of years as we try and rebuild. Here's a bunch of money to, just kind of sit there and shut up. And, and like you kind of mentioned, it's not in Kobe's nature to do that. Kobe's going to go out there next year and he's going to lay it all out there, especially if it's his last year like everybody's expecting. And I don't know. I just kind of rolled my eyes at everything Magic had to say today. And people just don't realize that Jim Buss has been in his position since 2005. So we've won championships, with him in this role. And somebody actually mentioned to me on Twitter, or they asked me, when have times ever been good, under Jim Buss? And he was in the same position when we won back-to-back titles. So I just think people are really misconstrued of what he does and his impact on the organization.
I mean, could you imagine a world where, like, we're almost giving Jim too much credit, where he knows the bad moves in advance and wants to stamp his name on those bad moves, and knows the good ones in advance and wants to give Mitch all the credit for those? Hey, like, come on, guys. Ryan, you made a great point. How can we give all the credit to Mitch and all the blame to Jim? That's crazy to me. The last little point I wanted to make on this is that whole Showtime era in particular. I've already compared them. I tweeted today. They're like that high school athlete that, can't get over the fact that they were once important, and they keep going to high school games and they have to tell everybody, well, my era was that much better, my era was this, my era was that, and they stick up for each other. Man, I'm over the Showtime era. I love that era of basketball. Basketball will always be changed because of them, but they can go. Matt, what are your thoughts on Magic's? I'd say, because he also in the same breath praised Byron for the job he's trying to do. What are your thoughts on a potentially biased angle from Magic and James Worthy and all those guys at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I find Magic just completely hypocritical right now. He's the guy that celebrated when D'Antoni got fired, and this year isn't even criticizing Byron at all. And I guarantee you, if we had this record and we're playing like this and Mike D'Antoni was the coach right now, he would be completely criticizing him, and it'd be a completely different storyline. But as to the Mitch and Jim Buss thing, I completely agree with Ryan and Gary. It's everything that goes well. Like the Dwight, when we acquired Dwight and Jeremy Lin, everyone was like, Mitch Kupchak did it again. And then I tweeted this earlier. And then when Dwight and Nash. And when Dwight left and Nash kept getting hurt, all the blame went on Jim Buss for like bringing them in. And it's just, I don't understand it. I don't know where the Jim Buss hate started from, because I never really was on it.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just gotten old now.
Well, my question is, would people be hating on him if the whole Chris Paul trade didn't get vetoed, and we'd still have Dwight and that? I don't even want to get into it because it makes me like pretty sad just thinking about it. But no one would be criticizing him if that trade didn't get vetoed.
Well, honestly, he's just a scapegoat. Like,
Yeah.
whenever the Lakers are bad, it's always got to be somebody's fault. It's not like an entire organizational thing, or it's just the fact that they just have to rebuild. Everybody goes through these things, and it's like the Lakers. There's just this perception that they never rebuild. They always just reload. Once one unit their window's closed, they're just going to make a trade and be right back in it. And they have to rebuild just like everybody does. And he's just a scapegoat. If something goes wrong, it's somebody's fault, and unfortunately Jim Buss gets the blame. But I think he's handled it really well. If I were in his position, I think I would just rage and just be infuriated and blast somebody out like in the media. But he's handled it really, really well.
I think part of the reason people think that is because of the Powell trade and how we went from 7 seed to like a top 2 contender overnight by getting Powell. So people just are expecting that to happen again, but it's like that's not how it works. Sometimes that can happen, but like you got to rebuild sometimes, and I guess people just don't get it.
Yeah.
Ryan, I think the next point I was going to make, just kind of broaden this to an entire NBA standpoint. That whole era of player, I mean, you hear the guys on NBA, on TNT or the TNT, whatever their show is called, they're all making this point about how, analytics is this, they're all a bunch of nerds who are doing that. Like, what are your thoughts on Charles Barkley's rant tonight?
Well, my favorite comment was he was like, I don't care that Houston has great defensive stats. Like, they're not a good defensive team. And then you look it up, and they have like their defensive rating 7th best in the league. I mean, they have been a good defensive team, but for some reason, I honestly don't think he watches basketball that much. And just people today, like, they're like the whole Byron thing with his no threes and long twos, even though, no threes and like he wants long twos, even though like there's been so many articles lately that show even contested threes are more valuable for an NBA offense than open long twos. And it's just they have to adapt to that. And that's I always talk about D'Antoni on Twitter, but that's one of the reasons why I liked him, because his offense it fit well with like the modern NBA. Byron's and Brian Shaw and those guys, they're past their time.
Well, when you look at like the past couple years, like even like the Rockets this year, the Heat the past couple years, they were successful offensively because they spaced the floor with a ton of shooters, and then they had a guy that could attack, like LeBron James or James Harden, and it makes it so difficult to guard when you have to cover that much space. And when the floor spacing is great, you can attack the paint, you can get good looks inside, or you can just kick it out to wide open shooters. And it's a successful way to play basketball. And if you're not on board with it, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense that you can't see it when it's worked so well for years now.
Every top team in the league right now plays like that, except Memphis, and that's because they basically have 2 elite post players. And it's like, yeah, if you have elite post players, fine. But when you're giving post ups to Robert Sacre and Tariq Black, that's just so stupid.
Matt, do you have any thoughts on the Chuckster?
I haven't seen the video yet, but yeah, I feel it's common sense. What Ryan and Gary said, if you don't have elite post players like Memphis, you're gonna have to rely on threes more than other teams. But yeah, it's just Charles Barkley being Charles Barkley, really.
Yeah, and I had a slight back and forth, I guess, a few days ago with Philip Barnett there on Twitter, and the point I'm trying to make when I hammer on those guys is the issue is the casual fan listens to those guys a lot more than the more nuanced writers who write some legitimately smart things about players that they research and they watch, hours of tape and they go through all the numbers, and to just kind of cast that aspect of basketball journalism aside, it's really frustrating, and for that casual fan who only tunes into the NBA on, when it's on TNT, and they're hearing about how James Harden doesn't play any defense anymore, but he's one of the higher rated defensive players in the league. And when they hear about, again, like you're saying, Ryan, about how Chuck is talking about how Houston's somehow a bad defensive team when they're ranked, rated number 7. And this is something that the players have to overcome when that type of narrative is being spewed out there by guys who
Oh.
frankly don't watch a bunch of the, very much of the NBA. It seems. I can't say they don't, but come on.
Another good comment that Charles Barkley said is they're showing highlights of Memphis on the show, on like the whatever that show's called, Inside the NBA or whatever, and they're like, oh, you don't need analytics to tell you that Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph's going to work. Yet Memphis was the team that hired John Hollinger from ESPN, who was like the analytics nerd. So that was pretty ironic.
Yeah, and it's, if we're talking about, the analytics nerds, and that, he somehow said that they're the guy that didn't get a girl in high school. Well, guess what, Chuck? I like analytics, I follow analytics, and I married my high school sweetheart. So suck it. So, at the end of the day, I mean, these guys are going to say what they want, and when we continue to talk about narratives against other players, well, that narrative or that storyline about how players are dumb jocks and numbers scare them, well, here's Chuck spewing it, and, only distances, that aspect or furthers, separates the conversation that could be had from both sides. I just want to kind of get back to the Magic thing really quick before we wrap things up. If you look back, Magic comes from an era, all those guys come from an era, a different NBA, if you will. I've compared, the Lakers continuing to want to bring back Showtime as Republicans wanting to bring back Reaganomics. I quickly looked at the trades that made the Lakers the Lakers. And you guys tell me, what would Twitter's reaction be to the Lakers acquiring Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for Dave Myers, Brian Winters, Junior Bridgman, Elmore Smith, none of which averaged 5 points in their careers or more. How would Twitter react to the Lakers pulling off that type of trade? Or to continue, they acquired Magic Johnson as the first pick in the 1979 draft. They acquired that pick by trading, Gail Goodrich, who was a good player, right, for a number 1 overall. We can go down the line here. The point I'm trying to make is, would these trades take place, or how can we honor their perspective when they come from a different era? What are your thoughts, Ryan?
Well, you mentioned the Gail Goodrich for the number 1 pick trade. I mean, that'd be like it'd be like whoever gets the number 1 pick trading it for like Joe Johnson, or because Goodrich was on like the tail end of his career when that trade happened.
Right.
And then the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you trade one of the best centers or the best center of all time
in his prime.
For guys that never average 5 points per game. I mean, that stuff doesn't happen anymore. It's the way you have to build a team now with the salary cap and all the restrictions that come with the CBA. It's so different from back then, and it makes you be patient. You can't go out on a spending spree just to spend. You have to be smart. Then you have to make good draft picks, and that's why that's why a lot of people, and Magic particularly, like talk about how like the Lakers need to make a splash. They need to turn things around quickly. It's easier said than done.
Right. Hey, Gary, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's just, in my opinion, these things just don't happen quickly anymore. It's a much smarter league.
Yeah, well, it's a smarter league. It's a bigger league. obviously, there's more teams nowadays, and kind of what Ryan said, you have to be patient. You can't just go, blow your money on whoever, like this last year's free agent class. After LeBron and Carmelo, there really wasn't, a ton of guys where you should go and spend big bucks on, like in terms of like unrestricted free agency. And I think the Lakers realized that, and they just kind of decided, okay, we missed out on the two big guys, so let's save our money for next offseason, because that's the worst thing that you can do is tie up your books with like 3-4 year contracts on guys that are only going to make you a mediocre team. Like you want contracts that are movable, or you want cap flexibility, or both if you can do it, and get draft picks. And the Lakers have kind of done that with really what little they had to work with going into this offseason. So it's just, they're trying to rebuild, and it's just gonna take time. There isn't, if there's a home run move out there, Mitch and Jem will find it. I mean, they've done it before, but it's just going to take time. That's the way this CBA is built. It's predicated on building almost through the draft. So we just have to be patient.
And also, to make those home run moves, you have to have assets, and we don't.
Exactly.
I mean, we don't have any assets right now. Like when we traded for Powell, I mean that trade to today's NBA is like, I don't think it would happen, because we didn't. I mean, we gave up quite a number of picks and like Marc Gasol, but I mean he wasn't really expected to be that good. But I mean, like the whole like the Chris Paul trade, we would have given up Lamar Odom, who was a Sixth Man of the Year, Pau Gasol obviously, and then the Dwight Howard trade, we gave up Andrew Bynum, who is coming off a career year where he was completely healthy. So it's like, and right now, I mean, our best asset is probably Julius Randle, and even him, he's played one game. So it's like in order to reload, and that's why the pick is so important, because even if you don't want a young player, which to me doesn't make any sense, that player is an asset that you can move for something else. And right now, to make a home run trade, we need to get assets first. It's going to take a while unless somehow we nail all of our draft picks and make great signings.
And since you brought up Bynum, that actually reminds me. Jim Buss was he was the big advocate of Bynum going into the 2005 draft. And I remember when we drafted him at number 10, so many Laker fans didn't even know who he was. Like, he was just this big guy out of high school who was really just, his mobility sucked, and he was so raw and had such a long way to go. And he turned into a really nice player that we traded for an elite center at the time. And it's like things like that Jim Buss doesn't get credit for, because he was like the driving force behind drafting Andrew Bynum, and it turned into a great deal. Which obviously Dwight's gone now, but that's really not a bad thing given the amount of injuries that he's piled up.
Yeah, I mean it's tough with Bynum. What we saw off the court with Bynum, he became kind of a laughingstock there. But like the Heat right now have that Hassan Whiteside guy, right? And I was listening to Dan Levitar the other day on the radio, who actually is good. He actually does use perspective, unlike those TNT guys. And, they were talking about him, and they, who were they talking to? I forget who they were interviewing, but he compared Whiteside to Bynum in his prime. And people, it's easy to forget how good Bynum turned out to be, right? I mean, he was part of the reason Kobe started changing his mind. His development started changing Kobe's mind before they brought Pau in. Now, Pau obviously really helped. Pau was essentially the icing on the cake when Kobe decided to, actually stay. But remember the year Bynum was having, he was dunking everything, he was blocking everything, until he landed on Lamar Odom's foot. He was turning out to be a really good player, and they were able to turn him into the top center in the league. I don't know. I just hate easy stances. I hate cliches. I hate all these easy stances that the Showtime Lakers tend to make, and I can be done with them. Whatever. Well, congratulations on the '80s. They were 30 years ago.
Yeah, well, and I tweeted that about Jim Buss earlier today too. It was like, sometimes it's about the moves that you don't make, and signing Bynum to what was I think at the time a 5-year or $120 million extension or something along those lines. It's like, could you imagine if we would have done that and he turned out the same like he did? I mean, we'd be in such a huge, like, we would have dug ourselves a hole probably 10 times bigger than this one, and we'd be really, really in trouble. So, he doesn't get enough credit for, like, little things like that. Not making terrible moves, just almost panicked moves.
Right.
We really maximized Bynum. I mean, he helped us win 2 titles, and then we traded him right as he began like his downfall from like injuries and stuff.
It's funny how that it seems they must know the players really well or something, because we traded Odom too, literally at the perfect time. Although I don't know how we only got like a second or late first round pick for him oh yeah, it was late first, and we ended up trading that pick. But we traded him at the perfect time. We traded Bynum at the perfect time. So I mean, the moves they've made in the past they've made good moves. It's just they've gotten ridiculously unlucky.
Well, I think Odom turned into Jordan Hill, right?
Yeah, because then they flipped that.
Fisher did.
Yeah, I think
that's right. Odom turned into the pick that they sent to Cleveland for Ramon Sessions. I think I have that right.
It might have.
I remember they got a trade exception in that deal too.
We used that for Nash. We used a trade exception for Nash. So.
Yeah, I mean, again, considering how devastatingly unlucky the Lakers have been these past few years, that they're in a situation where they're only a good draft pick, a couple smart free agents, and such not terrible luck. They're right back into at least playoff contention. Couldn't you guys see them contending for that in that 10 through 8 spot next year if things go as we hope?
I think in 2 years is where like we should be thinking that like we're gonna be back.
Right. I don't mean because back implies something on the playoffs. But I'm talking about like how exciting could that summer league team be?
Oh man.
Come on, that's gonna be great. Oh, by the way, Team Tank podcast. We're going on the road. We're going to be there.
We should totally do that.
I've already decided that I'm going to go this year. Whether we keep our top 5 pick or not, I'm going to go.
It's usually mid-July?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, so Team Tank will be in Sin City, this July. So look for us out there.
We'll be the Rebuild Guild by then.
Yeah. Different name.
Yeah. So hey, NBA, could credential us. How about that? And sponsor us. How about that too? So, I guess we have a podcast tomorrow coming up that will go deeper into all these issues. I also wanted to talk about, Gary, you mentioned the moves the Lakers didn't make. I wrote an article that I've gotten some mixed reviews about Dwight Howard's departure and potentially dodging a bullet there. So we're going to get into that. We have our first official guest tomorrow. We have Fear LA's Mark Gonzalez. Ryan, Gary, and myself, we will all be interviewing him tomorrow. Thank you, Matt, for running the tweet account tonight. Thanks again, everybody, for the support that we continue to get with you guys. We're at about 360 followers, so if that keeps on climbing, I'll have a rotten tomato thrown at me. My wife will gladly stand up and do that. Again, thanks everybody. Great effort tonight. Lakers with their league-leading 5th straight loss. Unfortunately, the Knicks are right behind them at 4. So, all right, guys. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks.